Alright, diving into 1915 here. And we see an example here of why you want to use specific units, perhaps. We're removing a 124 infantry battalion and brigade brigade, and we're it's early, and we're adding one on the same turn. Now, if I'm not using specific units, or if I don't have some rules to indicate who's got to be swapped out, I'm not taking someone off the line here who actually needs to be removed. I'm just going to pop the guy I just got, so I don't have to move him, so I don't have to think. Is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know. It shouldn't. There's, if it was purely a strength point game, there would be no need to worry about it, right? But there is something going on there which maybe is interesting to look at and think about. Oh, this guy's coming off the line and this guy's coming in. I don't know how much purpose it really serves. In terms of if you want to be absolutely historically accurate and know where each unit is at what time, I've given up on that. That's not worth it for me. But then once you get to it, you realize, wow, that was just this. It would have been this annoyance, this little mechanical annoyance where I have to rail up an extra brigade in order. And then rail the other, just pull the other one off the map. But, and it could be way up at the front, which might not be the unit that actually would have been removed. You probably would have removed one that's seen combat, that needs the rest, or is ready, or whatever, but not the one that's vital. And it's a lot of cases, the whole set of withdrawals is based on kind of this idea of you either withdraw the exact unit no matter what it is, which to me isn't realistic, or you withdraw whatever, which doesn't give that added picture at all, which probably is fine, but it's just an odd choice between them. All right, the biggest attack the Germans punched into very weak British unit, just a couple of strength points of pretty damaged stuff, trying to entrench here. Then, here. Then that managed to pocket this partially, and they got a whole bunch of units against that, smacked into it, drove it back. They broke through the entrenchment there because they had the opposite sides, no linkage, not enough front connected to be considered a viable trench protection. So that was negated. And it looks like they can do the same thing, just keep rolling up the British line if something doesn't change. Largely ignored over here. Little advance here, and they started bringing the guns up to take Reims out. What they're looking at is they're not too far from creating a pocket out of this entrenched area here. And if they can do that, well, then the French either have to pull out or possibly end up trapped in there, and that would be very, very bad. So, if they can start threatening this sector a little bit more, either by punching this way and this way, and that becomes an untenable position, and that's their main focus here. I stripped the guns out of Brussels, no point in them being there. The Belgians are, I just have no real way to bring them in at this point. They don't make sense because the rules were different. I could have said, January 1st they're going to be coming in, and then pushed a lot of Germans up there to defend against them. Alright, on to the Allied turn. Another attempt by the Allies just to strengthen their lines. Unfortunately, what they've done here, they've actually probably gotten too much strength focused here. That means this salient over here is a little weaker. But, the Germans were threatening, and causing this painful situation where it looked like I was attacking with the Allies. I had been to try to break out the Brits here, and so now I've got a stronger, thicker line up in the up in northern France than I really do in the area kind of south of Paris, which I'm very worried about. I'm less worried here. This little pocket is somewhat scary. I may need to start moving some troops into Reims itself if I want to defend that salient. Right now there just aren't enough in this area, but I started moving my reinforcements into this central location here to move forward. I've also started moving artillery onto the line because, well, as you can see, French got 40 supply points. Brits got 2 new armies in replacement for the BEF. The BEF no longer exists. We've now got 2 armies in position up there. And, you know, I think we're going to hit that stalemate position. I keep crossing my fingers, at least as the Allies, because the Germans have just been able to continue and prolong this offensive much, much further than historically happened. And again, I think it's the Belgians not being in the field that has really made the difference here. You know, it was a close run thing historically. And you take, it's a significant sized little army there, you take that completely out of play, and the Allies are stretched a lot thinner. So I don't feel too badly about the historicity of what we're seeing here. I think it's believable given that the Belgians have been blocked off. Okay, end of the German turn. And I'm finding myself throwing counters away, not sure if I used them or not, because of the replacements, the mechanics of trying to cope with them now. They're just too, it's too much of a pain in the ass. It really is. I knew it would be a problem, and it is. Even with my rotating and everything, I've got pieces aside, and I can't tell whether I used them or not. So I just threw them out. I figured they're German. The Germans need some damage done to them here. So what have we gotten with the poor Germans? And I don't know why there's so few pieces here. There should be another unit there probably. It's just pushed me beyond my breaking point in terms of what I can deal with in this game. It was already a pretty fiddly game, and now you add this one last thing. And like I said, it's the straw. You know, it brought it from a game that was still interesting to me and still fun to one that, anyway, it must be better on the computer. That's all I gotta say. Over here, the Germans managed to punch through using some supply against the English, further degenerating their position. Used a lot of ammo, like 7 points, to bombard Reims. They didn't destroy it, but it's weak enough that it's going to fall. I don't know what the hell the French are going to do. Because another breakthrough down here in the weak point in the line, you know, it's just, there's no standing against this. I thought I had a line here if it had held, or if the Germans hadn't attacked, which was perhaps the most likely, they would have been able to entrench eventually and maybe hold it and have a standby place. But it just looks like it's going to continue like this forever. I don't know. The French are getting more reinforcements, but there's no stabilization that seems there. Now, part of that is, you know, I'm not going to be able to balance the lines completely. Now, I think some of that is not just me being lazy. In fact, a lot of it is not me being lazy. Making a decision to commit over here meant I didn't have the troops over here. The French can't just throw their troops into a zone of control. So the only way to balance the line is to pull back a hex, to retreat from the enemy. That's the only way you can get that kind of balance. Now, I didn't have the kind of force to be able to do that anyway, but I may have to. Because otherwise it means I'll be defending behind the Seine here. These spaces are weakened, are at risk. You can see there's only 2 people on this, but you got 3 stacks on that. I can't stand against it. You know, it's going to fall back. And the French position just looks so precarious. The hinge here is not very strong either. You know, once you start breaking one or another place, it's just going to keep pushing through. I don't know. It doesn't help much that the Allies really look like they're just completely losing the war here. I pulled back behind the sign here. Just trying to make sure, with all these counters on top, I'm not sure that everything's actually covered by the French. It's kind of an issue. But, just had to throw some extra troops into Reims. I may have to just fall back from that whole salient. Pulled out of hexes like this and this, where they haven't been lost, and I was entrenching, but I can't hold them. It's hard enough. I hope this is not French, because if it is, that's a lot of troops that that I can't afford to have there. But there is no such conglomeration. Even here, I am sliding troops down. I've got extra units down here. I'll be able to strengthen this southern front a little bit. It doesn't really matter. Terrain's not important in this game for the most part. The cities maybe are a little bit, but the important thing is the units, and I can go find someplace else to defend. It's the losses that add up, really. So, I don't know. The Brits pulled back out of their space to solidify their line as well. And, you know, the Germans will flow in and they'll keep attacking, and as it stands, their attacks are being made at a slight advantage in terms of demoralization points. Often quite a good advance, say 5-1 or 5-3 or 5-2, which is a pretty good trade-off. I look at what it would, what the response is that say the French could do locally or the British, and they just can't. I don't see the kind of power to be able to punch their way through yet. So I don't know. Just keep giving ground, and that doesn't feel right. It feels like France would be suing for some sort of peace at this point. So continuing in the vein, if I'm dealing with things as strength points, and I look in here, well, this turn I'm getting an 8-5 Mountain Division, 8BR. I have the actual correct unit, but the problem is, in no way is it an 8-5. On its full strength side, it's a 12-5. On its half strength, or on its reduced side, it's a 10-5. If I put a -2 marker, it becomes an 8-5. I'm going to go with that. I don't understand. You know, it's not really clear. Again, they don't make it very obvious how to use the reinforcement charts correctly. This creates a bigger unit that can be reinforced, but not really, because the biggest it can get to is a 7. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this unit. You know, it can't be pumped up even as big as an 8. I don't know why it's a 12-5 unit on one side. Maybe it'll come back at some later point as a larger unit after being withdrawn. I just don't know. And that's, you know, one of the little aspects of this game that really kind of irritates me with the countermix, etc. Okay, so the Germans pushed forward a little bit. First they thumped into this hex here with a mobile attack and they failed. But then they made a successive attack there when they looked at this and could not really attack it without that success in the mobile attack. They'd actually set up to attack this, but it just looked too ugly. They also, I think they attacked here. They also filled in this hex here, getting the rest of the same line and being able, you know, that'll give them some defensive advantage with a major river running along their front. They can't really attack across it too easily. The French will be able to defend along that. If they can breach that, that's yet another problem for the French, no question. Over here they tried, I think, pounding forward. They did so here, I think. And then here they were unable to advance. They looked at the numbers there and didn't like it. I think they also, no, they attacked here and failed. They looked at the numbers here and looked at the amount of supply they'd have to spend, and it just doesn't look cost effective anymore. That's the problem. The German advance is, you know, it is possible to keep going, but it's not really worthwhile, as it were. the Allies are going to run out of supply points in the sense that they have to launch an offensive, I think, before the Germans will. And, you know, it's just kind of running out of really valuable attacks where even if you do end up turning the flank, you won't have enough supply or breaking through. They're just not getting enough supply to continue the attacks because the defender's spending less overall. Even though the defender spends at twice the rate per unit, remember those units are tripled in general if they don't retreat. So basically, if you can't force the enemy to retreat, it's really kind of questionable to actually attack them. Your supply costs are higher. At least that's the way I'm figuring it here. The attacks that I've seen, you know, I mean, this was... The attack made here was a good number attack. There was a good chance of them pushing the French out of there. This one would not have been as good a chance. This would have been impossible. So here, the British are going to have to pull out again because they lose their trenchant benefit here. Unless they can do some kind of counterattack, but I don't think that's going to happen. And here we are halfway through January, basically. The English have pulled back. They've also pulled northward, and their headquarters is down in Rouen. Actually, I get to replace one of these units. I'll put something in there. Because they didn't move. They just landed on top of their headquarters. The headquarters didn't have to move. The French have moved up to cover more of the line. There's very little English left at all. And the French are stretching this line a little further. There's danger they get pushed out of, say, here. I think... that's not completed yet, so that's a possible tasty treat for the Germans to gain. German troops will, of course, move forward again, down here, trying to cover that river line somehow. That's getting difficult. There was thoughts about pulling out of this hex, but you know, while this is somewhat more defensible, I'm building the entrenchments here. If I can hold this, it gives me a little bit more breathing room there. And we're not seeing any collapse over here. I was trying to figure out how to extricate this unit, which is a powerful unit. However, it is in kind of a, well, it's really not in that dangerous a location. So it seemed like an excellent candidate, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to start swapping it towards the rest of the line, because if I can get that in here, I'll be in a better position there overall. I don't really need that strong a unit there. Will it hold? Who knows? You know, I keep thinking it will, but the Germans keep surprising me. They seem to be grinding down again, but then they turn around and find new holes. And they're not really grinding down that much. They're concentrating their efforts in different areas each time. Wherever the weakness occurs, wherever troops have to be pulled off, they've got kind of interior lines so they can shift around. Plus, they can take the rail. They can load up in the hex that's in a zone of control. They can ride the rails someplace. They can get off, and they can wander into the battle after that. They can't ride the rails right into a zone of control. That gives them a lot more flexibility between the interior lines and that they're able to really deploy their troops a lot more quickly. New reinforcements, you kind of have to plan these to turn in advance, as it were. The replacements have gone here, and I think these are regular troops. I think I pushed them up here. Kind of the... I should have enough here, so I'm not sure here, and I know this is weak because I've stretched the line. And you got to kind of guess, because wherever the Germans actually hit. I'm also moving, you can see the German artillery is beginning to pull off the line, the heavy artillery, to make its way and start sieging Paris if I get enough points. I view that as important, because if I can knock these Parisian fortresses out, well... that forces the French to cover that area. Right now they've got this big nasty block sitting right in the middle of the German line. All right.